dedicated to exposing wrongful convictions and demanding justice reform in America's criminal legal system. I'm Rebecca, your host. Today's episode marks the conclusion of our journey with Scott Barmore, a man whose story has forced all of us to examine not just his case, but the very heart of what we think justice should be, and what the Constitution says justice is. If you've followed this series, you know Scott's case is about more than just a single verdict. It's about due process as a whole. The dangers when the prosecution takes shortcuts, and the consequences when the system fails so tragically. If you're new here, don't worry. I'll take you through Scott's story from the beginning, explore why due process is so vital, and reflect on what this fight means for all of us. Settle in as we revisit the facts, the failures, and the hope that still remains. Let's start by retracing Scott Barmore's journey. Years ago, when Scott was 18, he accepted responsibility for his original charges, which was 2 robberies. It was his first offense. He pled guilty. Judge sentenced him to community service and parole. While on parole, he was accused of 3 additional robberies, allegations he has always denied. Now think about that for a minute. Why would somebody take ownership and responsibility of 2 crimes, plead guilty to them, and then years later, 3 new crimes, but he says it's not him, and still sticks to that same story today? Did they really investigate, or did they just want to close the case? Despite his claims of innocence, Scott made the difficult decision to turn himself in without legal counsel, believing wholeheartedly that the truth would come out. But what happened next has changed his life forever. Scott was convicted of the new charges and sentenced to 60 years to life in prison. Most troubling, though, Scott was denied an evidentiary hearing, a basic right that ensures all evidence is examined, tested, and challenged in open court. Without it, critical facts and testimony never saw the light of day. The state also claimed Scott failed to finish high school, using this detail during the initial probation and throughout the legal process. But the records tell a different story, and they're crystal clear. Scott had already graduated before the first allegations even arose. And let's be clear, whether or not Scott graduated from high school has absolutely no bearing on whether he was guilty or innocent of the crimes he was accused of. Academic records do not determine criminal responsibility. So why did this narrative matter? It's possible that this false claim was used to question Scott's character or even his credibility, distracting people from the actual facts of the case. Even more troubling, if the state was willing to misrepresent something so basic and easily proven as a high school diploma, what else did they get wrong? What other leads or suspects might have been ignored because the focus was on Scott and not the truth? You see, when the system clings to a narrative that can be disproven with documentation, it raises questions about the integrity of the entire investigation, about whether the real perpetrator was even considered. Due process is the bedrock of our legal system. It's the promise that no one will lose their liberty or future without a fair, open, and thorough review of the facts. Due process means having the right to counsel, the right to an evidentiary hearing, and the right to challenge the evidence against you. In Scott's case, the denial of an evidentiary hearing meant that witnesses weren't called, evidence wasn't cross-examined, and the full truth was never aired in court. This isn't a minor oversight. It's a fundamental breakdown of justice. When due process is denied, the risk of wrongful conviction rises dramatically. It's not just about Scott. It's about all of us. If it can happen to him, it can happen to anyone. Throughout this episode, I'll return to this theme. Due process is not a technicality. It's the difference between justice and injustice, between truth and error, between freedom and a lifetime behind bars. So let's walk through Scott's case step by step, examining what happened and where the system failed. Scott's original charges were serious, and as a man, he took responsibility for them. But after serving time and being released on parole, he was accused of 3 additional robberies. Scott has always maintained his innocence regarding these new allegations. When a warrant was issued for his arrest, Scott, believing in the system, as so many people do, turned himself in, expecting a chance to just simply clear his name. Instead, he found himself without a lawyer, facing a complex legal process alone. The court convicted him of the new charges and imposed a sentence of 60 years to life. But the most glaring issue is this: he was denied an evidentiary hearing. No opportunity to present new evidence, no chance to cross-examine witnesses, no forum for truth. And throughout the prosecution, the state insisted that Scott never even finished high school. Not only did this have nothing to do with the evidence against him, but it may have actually blinded investigators to other possibilities. If police or prosecutors were so intent on fitting Scott to their theory that they ignored clear proof of his graduation, it's fair to ask, did they overlook other suspects? Did they fail to follow up on leads that might have pointed to someone else? When a case is built on shaky or dishonest foundations, it's not just unfair, it's dangerous. It means the real perpetrator could still be out there, and that justice has not been served for anyone. What most people forget, because the court system treats every accused person as a case number, is that these are real people. For Scott, the consequences of these failures have been profound. Imagine facing decades in prison, separated from family and community, knowing that critical evidence was never heard. Imagine being labeled for life by a process that didn't even give you a fair chance. Scott's story is a reminder that justice is not just about punishment. It's about dignity, restoration, and the possibility of redemption. The denial of due process doesn't just affect one person. It ripples out to families, friends, and entire communities. If this can happen to Scott, it can happen to you. We know Scott's case is not an isolated incident. Across the United States, procedural shortcuts, denied hearings, and ignored evidence have led to countless wrongful convictions. If y'all know my story and why I started Wickedly Judged, you know my husband is in the same predicament. Convicted of a crime, we have evidence that proves he didn't do, that somebody else confessed, but because it didn't fit the narrative of the detectives and the prosecution, it was never presented at trial. The barriers to the appeals system are high, and the odds are stacked against those without monetary resources or legal expertise. Justice reform is not just about correcting past mistakes. It's about building a system that protects everyone. That means guaranteeing the right to an evidentiary hearing, ensuring accurate records are used in every case, no more burying evidence by the prosecution. It means providing real access to counsel, not overworked public pretenders that will close a case just so they can move on to the next. Because they get paid no matter if the person is found guilty or innocent. It also means creating transparency and accountability at every step of the process. And it means refusing to let irrelevant or false narratives, like the story about Scott's graduation, distract us from the real question. Did the state really prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt? Or did it simply find a convenient target to check off a box? Scott's fight is a call to action for all of us. We must demand a system that values truth over expediency, fairness over finality, people over process, and truth over conviction rates. As we reflect on Scott's journey, we see not just the story of one man, but a mirror held up to our justice system. Scott's resilience, hope, and determination in the face of adversity are a testament to the human spirit. Scott's legacy is not just in his case, but in the light his story shines on the urgent need for justice reform. Let his story be a reminder. Due process is the foundation of justice. When we fail to protect it, we fail ourselves. And when the state is willing to misrepresent something as basic as a high school diploma, we must ask the question, what else was overlooked or ignored? Did investigators ever truly look for the real perpetrator, or did they just stop at the first convenient suspect? Before we close, let's return once more to the core of this episode, due process. It's the principle that protects us all. The safeguard that ensures justice is not just a word, but a reality. When did we stop relying on due process and just worry about closing a case? How many more innocent lives have to be ruined before we say enough is enough? When will we stand up and say that the Constitution of the United States is to be followed, that the laws that are in place are to be followed, that due process is not a hit or miss, it's an every time action? Scott Barmore's case shows what's at stake when due process is denied, and what we must fight for if we want a system worthy of our trust. If we truly want to end wrongful convictions, we must demand that every person, no matter their background or circumstance, whether they're rich or poor, black or white, who cares? They must receive the full protection of the law. That means hearings, representation, and a real chance to be heard. And it means refusing to let irrelevant or misleading narratives cloud our judgment or distract from the pursuit of truth. It means conviction rates are not as important as the truth. Making sure guilty people, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, are put behind bars. Not just innocent people whose lives are ruined because you want to hurry up to get your promotion, or to close a high-profile case, or to get commendations or a raise. You do not have the right to destroy people's lives for your gain. Enough is enough. Accountability needs to be had. If Scott's story has made an impact on you in any way, here are some ways you can help drive change. Share this episode on social media, with friends, sitting at the dinner table with family, and anyone else who cares about justice. Raising awareness is the first step toward holding the people accountable for their deeds. If you're a legal professional, especially with experience in post-conviction or appellate work, we invite you to reach out. Your insight could be the key to unlocking new possibilities in not only Scott's case, but any of the other cases that we've already handled. You can support our cause by making a donation. Go to wickedlyjudged.com and either purchase merchandise or make a donation. Your contributions help us secure vital court records, expert analysis, and the resources needed to pursue truth and justice for people like Scott. Follow Wickedly Judged on your favorite podcast platform. Keep the facts in focus. Remind others. Scott was convicted on new charges without an evidentiary hearing, and his high school graduation, a fact that could easily be proven, was misrepresented in court. If the state is willing to distort something so basic, it calls the entire case into question. It's not just about Scott's future. It's about the integrity of our justice system and the safety of our communities. If the focus was on the wrong person, the real perpetrator might not have faced any consequences at all and could have committed more crimes since then. You know, we can't do this work alone. It takes a community to make a difference. Your voice, your share, your support, and your purchases all help push cases like Scott's toward the fair day in court every person deserves. I want to sincerely thank our sponsor, Veteran Alliance, for making this episode possible, and for supporting all of the work that we do here at Wickedly Judged. And JP Verse of Versefire Records for our powerful intro and outro music. Remember, justice isn't a feeling, it's a process. And when that process fails, challenging the outcome is not just a right, but a responsibility. As always, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay hopeful. Question everything, because nobody deserves to be wickedly judged.